Hey, welcome back. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi, and this is Flashpoints, the wars that shaped us. You know, we often think of history as a series of deliberate choices, kings issuing decrees, generals drawing up battle lines, revolutions sparked by manifestos. But sometimes, history is something that happens to us, something that bypasses reason entirely and takes hold of the body itself. Today, we're talking about a flashpoint that wasn't a war in the traditional sense, but a conflict between the human mind and a mystery it could not comprehend. A story where the battlefield was a city square, the weapon was uncontrollable movement, and the casualties fell not to steel, but to exhaustion. This is the story of the dancing plague of 1518. Picture this: Strasbourg, in the height of a sweltering July. The Holy Roman Empire, modern-day France. The air is thick with the smells of a crowded medieval city, and thicker still with anxiety. Harvests have been failing. Poverty is rampant. Superstition hangs in the heat like a fog. And into this tinderbox of tension, a single woman named Frau Troffea steps into the street. And she begins to dance. Not a joyful dance. Not a celebratory one. This is something else entirely. Her movements are frantic, compulsive. Her face is a mask of trance or torment. She dances alone, for hours, until her feet are bloody and she collapses from sheer exhaustion. She sleeps for a few brief hours, and then she gets up, and she starts again. The next day, she's still dancing. And then something inexplicable happens. She's joined by another, then another. Within a week, there are over 30 people in that street, caught in the same relentless, frenzied rhythm. The city council is baffled. The clergy is horrified. This is no ordinary revelry. This is an epidemic. And here's where the response takes a turn that, to our modern minds, seems utterly absurd. The local authorities consulted their physicians, who, following the prevailing medical theory of the time, diagnosed the problem as an excess of hot blood. Their prescribed cure? More dancing. They believed the dancers needed to literally dance the fever out of their systems. So they did the unthinkable. They cleared a marketplace, built a wooden stage, hired musicians, pipe and drum players, and even brought in professional dancers to keep the afflicted moving. The idea was to let them dance it out, to provide a controlled environment for the mania to burn itself out. It was a catastrophic miscalculation. Instead of curing them, the official sanction poured fuel on the fire. The music, the spectacle, the communal energy, it acted like a contagion. The number of dancers swelled from dozens to possibly hundreds. They danced day and night, under the blistering sun and through the dark. Their bodies gave out in gruesome ways. Heart attacks, strokes, sheer physical collapse. Historical accounts describe the cobblestones becoming slick with blood from their torn feet. They danced, quite literally, until they died. For weeks, the city was held hostage by this terrifying, rhythmic convulsion. It wasn't until early September when authorities finally reversed course, banning music in public gatherings and carting the remaining dancers off to a mountain shrine for spiritual healing, that the plague finally began to subside. The final death toll is estimated in the dozens, maybe over 100. A city had danced itself to death. So what in the world actually happened? This is the question that has echoed for 5 centuries. As an engineer, I'm trained to look for a root cause, a systemic failure. But history, especially of the human psyche, rarely offers a single switch that was flipped. The explanations for Strasbourg's nightmare are a tapestry of possibility, each thread revealing something about the dancer's world and our own. The first and most persistent theory from the time was supernatural or religious, demonic possession or divine punishment. In an age of profound faith and fear, this was a logical conclusion. The dancers themselves often reported visions and terrors. But we, in our secular age, look for material causes. One of the most popular modern theories is mass psychogenic illness, what we used to call mass hysteria. It's a powerful phenomenon where psychological distress manifests as physical symptoms in a group. Think about the context. Strasbourg in 1518 was under immense strain. Famine, political instability, the terrifying spread of new diseases like syphilis, a religious landscape cracking under the pressure that would soon erupt into the Reformation. The people were drowning in stress with no outlet. The dancing plague may have been that outlet, a collective nervous breakdown performed with the body. Frau Troffea's initial, desperate dance became a somatic language that the entire city's anxiety suddenly understood and adopted. Then there's the biological angle, ergotism. Ergot is a fungus that grows on damp rye, a staple grain. It contains chemicals similar to LSD. Ingestion can cause convulsions, spasms, hallucinations, and a burning sensation in the limbs, symptoms that could be misinterpreted as a compulsion to dance. The poor, eating the cheapest, moldiest bread, would have been most susceptible. It's a compelling, tangible culprit. But most historians point out that the detailed accounts don't really describe the classic, writhing convulsions of ergot poisoning. These people were performing coordinated, if frenzied, dance steps for days on end. Poisoning usually incapacitates, it doesn't create endurance. For me, the most haunting explanation sits in the space between all of these. It's cultural. In the centuries before 1518, there are scattered records across Europe of dancing manias, often tied to a figure named Saint Vitus. People would pilgrimage to his shrines, seeking cures for a kind of dancing sickness. The idea was in the cultural atmosphere. In a society with strict hierarchies and repressed emotions, where peasant life was a grind of unending labor, the concept of a sanctioned, uncontrollable breakdown, one where you were not responsible for your actions because you were possessed by the dance, might have been, in a terrible way, a perverse kind of release. It was a script for suffering that the community already knew. Once Frau Troffea unconsciously began to act it out, it gave permission for dozens of others to express their own buried agony, their fear, their despair, in the only way the collective unconscious would allow. I think about this a lot, especially living in a city like New York, where we have our own rhythms, our own collective stresses. We don't dance in the streets until we drop, but we have our own scripts for communal coping, don't we? The way a city can get swept up in a frenzy, whether it's a financial bubble, a viral social media trend, or a wave of panic. The human mind is a social organ. We are wired to sync up. In Strasbourg, that syncing happened in the most literal, physical, and deadly way possible. It was a war between the individual's autonomy and the group's psyche, and for those few terrible weeks, the group mind won, with devastating consequences. The dancing plague of 1518 forces us to ask, where does the self end and the crowd begin? How thin is the veneer of our conscious control when our environment presses in with enough force? Those dancers weren't just individuals. They were symptoms of a city breaking down. Their bodies became the battleground where famine, fear, and faith fought it out. They are a stark reminder that history isn't just about what people decide to do. It's also about what happens when decision-making breaks down, when the world becomes so overwhelming that the only response is a desperate, shared, and catastrophic rhythm. Thanks for listening to this episode of Flashpoints. If this story moved you, or made you think, please share it with someone. It's conversations about these strange echoes from the past that help us understand the rhythms of our own present. This show is produced by Light Knot Studios. You can find more of our work and discover other stories where humanity meets its turning points at lightknotstudios.com. I'm Ibnul J. Farabi. Until next time, take care.